Hello and welcome to Alchemy for the 21st Century, the Rebirth of Resistance. My name's Gary. I'd just like to take a little time to talk with you about current events. I'm not here to go into great details because details leads to spinning, and spinning is side-taking. And I'm not about taking sides, especially when it's nothing more than the same old coin. Maybe what we're seeing happening in the world today is a type of economic imperialism that portrays itself as a solution to economic woes and fears that is being employed by both East and West corporatism. It leads us to believe that there is a split, but this is not necessarily true because both are doing the same thing and it appears to be working towards the same goal. So what we could maybe say is that this contest is about who's going to lead this new global system and who's going to be their allies or followers. And now we still do have the threat of war or physical conflict, but this is really just for the masses to continue their belief in nationalism or the idea that my way is better than yours, which reinforces the false idea of cultural exceptionalism on both sides this time. And maybe what is stimulating this movement is the hijacking of the rebirth of resistance. Because remember, the rebirth of resistance is about mankind's desire for something better that pushes him into a new direction. It is not about violence demonstrations or being in the streets or hate, but we are seeing this because it is a reaction, because the masses want to become relevant again in areas where poverty and austerity has become the norm. So what we could say is the world is changing, and why would mankind not want a better future? Matter of fact, that's the norm. People like to have a better future. But what we may be seeing, okay, is that this global movement for something better is being manipulated by a system that portrays itself as a solution because it is perfectly aware of man's frustrations, angers, and willingness to grasp for anything that will give them a better life. And there's two ways to hijack this type of motion or movement. One way would be stagnation. The second way is through the psychosis of keep. Stagnation is when jobs are removed from a culture that establishes an environment of economic hardships and in order to steal the wealth of the working classes. It begins the process of warehousing human potential in order for them not to have any expectations for great jobs when the rescue system is finally engaged. We also have what's called the psychosis of keep, and the psychosis of keep is nothing more than the elite's desire to have it all. And this desire divides the culture and begins an almost paranoid attitude that produces strict laws and harsh environments and harsh enforcement that is needed to keep the boundaries established. And also too is the psychosis of keep is a way to bargain with the rich and the elite in order for them to keep their wealth and roles and cooperate with the new system. And if you have both the psychosis of keep and stagnation working together in the same area, it will produce austerity for that culture. And maybe the linchpin on this movement is the dual economy. We have the old economy laying in ruins, a product of thinking after World War II. Simply speaking, it was a economy based on expansion due to cheap energy. Jobs were the norm because if the masses had money, then they would spend it on imaginary products in need, which increased the wealth and power of corporations. But we begin to see a change occurring, first in the 70s with oil embargoes and problems, and second we have the emphasis on globalism in the 80s. Then in the 90s we begin to see a change in bankruptcy laws. So what we could say here that maybe they was aware of something and was preparing for it. Since the Great Recession, collapse, or whatever you want to call it, what we're seeing now is a model built on contraction controlled by oligopolies. And what this does too is it's able to accumulate much wealth without really much expansion. And if expansion is necessary, what they can do is search the globe for cheap labor, which ensures their profits. And this motion has done nothing more than collapse wages and the quality of life for many, many individuals. So what we could say now is that this new model is fully engaged, and it is the one that's being measured and counted. And so what we have here is the old economy laying in ruins, waiting for recovery that might never occur, because what counts now is the new economy. And we have, last week we had a respected agency tell us that Western civilization may collapse due to the disparity between the rich and the poor and limitations on resources, which is probably founded upon peak energy models. But this might not really be the case. This might be a projection of fear, because civilizations don't really collapse. It appears what they do is they peak, decline, and morph into something else. So the question here should be, is what is civilization about to morph into? And this brings us to the dual destiny of mankind. And this is because civilization or social reality is an invention. So what we should be asking here is, what are the inventors of civilization or social reality about to conjure up for us to believe in again and become a workforce for? I really don't see this as being a system of the haves or the have-nots, but one that can be described as the needed and the unneeded, a type of Ecclesiam principle, where mankind becomes divided due to limited resources and the lack of employment. Now you would sort of say that this has been here before, this is the way it's always been, and this is true because it's really nothing new. It's nothing more than a reinvention of something old. But this time it will be different. It will be globally central and will be based on genetics, which will determine what side of the glass wall you are looking in and your quality of life. But it doesn't have to be this way. We see people beginning to talk about a new paradigm, but they never go into any great details, because a new paradigm changes the rules of social reality and civilization. And this is very, very difficult to do because these rules are very ancient and entrenched. But if this topic interests you, why don't you take a chance and go to my website, because I do give details. And it's not because I believe this is the paradigm that we must follow, but it is an example of doing things differently by a redefinition of what is self-worth, cultural purpose, and fresh ideas. Because it is not about revolution, it is about evolution of thought, where mankind begins to take back his destiny or changes his destiny once he becomes aware of knowledge that supports this possibility. Thank you for taking time to view my video.